To our highly esteemed President, Mr. Donald Trump. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to host a state banquet in honor of President Trump's state visit to China. To begin with, speaking on behalf of the government of China and the people of China, I would like to extend a very warm and sincere welcome to President Trump and the distinguished American delegation. This visit is, in every sense, a historic event. This year marks the beginning of China's 15th five-year plan. Over 1.4 billion Chinese rooted in 5,000 years of civilization. Chinese modernization is being comprehensively advanced through high-quality development. This year also marks the 250th anniversary of American independence. Over 300 million Americans are rekindling the spirit of patriotism, innovation, and pioneering, propelling the nation toward a new chapter of development. The people of China and the United States are both great, realizing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again. So it is entirely possible to coexist, mutually reinforce each other, and benefit the world.
Welcome everyone to another edition of STM Media, Global News and World Report. I'm Yeshayahu, and today we're bringing you the topic of the Thucydides trap. I know, a big word, but we're going to dive into it today. The Thucydides trap. How does it apply to the United States and China? Well, we're going to find out, so stay tuned. Rachel, take it away.
Hi, this is Rachel Israel with STM News and Global World Report. We have breaking news that will have a huge impact on the global scene in the very near future. Let's take a look at what's going on around the world. Tonight, we turn to a crisis hiding in plain sight.
I'd like to invite you, Mr. President, to deliver your opening remarks. President Trump, I'm very pleased to meet you in Beijing. Welcome back to China after 9 years. The whole world is watching our meeting. Currently, transformation not seen in a century is accelerating across the globe, and the international situation is fluid and turbulent. The world has come to a new crossroads. Can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap and create a new paradigm of major country relations? Can we meet global challenges together and provide more stability for the world? Can we, in the interests of the well-being of our two peoples and the future of humanity, build a brighter future together for our bilateral relations? These are the questions vital to history, to the world, and to the people.
What the theory suggests is when a rising power, in this case China, challenges the status of the established power, in this case the United States, war is almost inevitable. And Allison does a sort of historical series of case studies to, in his view, demonstrate this. He then goes on to suggest that the best way essentially to avoid war is for the established power to make accommodations for the rising power. So for Xi to say this, he's basically saying war could be the outcome of China's rise. In America, if you want to avoid war, you got to move over and let us essentially surpass you.
Imagine this. A colossal American aircraft carrier, a floating city of steel and thunder, is slicing through the waves of the South China Sea. On the horizon, a Chinese destroyer appears, sleek and gray, bristling with missiles. For a moment, the two titans of the sea just sit there, staring at each other. The air crackles with radio chatter, with unspoken threats, and with the very real possibility that one wrong move, one twitchy finger on a button, could ignite a fire that would scorch the entire globe. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood film, it's a Tuesday in the modern world. It's the sort of nerve-jangling standoff that has become dangerously common as two of the world's biggest, most powerful nations circle each other like heavyweight boxers in the final round. This simmering tension has a name, dreamt up by clever people who read very old books. They call it the Thucydides trap. The question on everyone's lips today, on this very day, 2026, May 19th, is whether America and China are about to fall into the very same trap. The whole situation is unbelievably complicated, a tangled mess of money, military hardware, and national pride. Let's be absolutely clear about this Thucydides trap. It sounds frightfully academic, the sort of thing you'd hear mumbled by a man with a beard and elbow patches on his jacket. But the idea itself is as simple as a hammer. Imagine you are the king of the castle. You have the biggest chair. You have the best food. Everyone does what you say. Life is good. Then one day, a new fellow turns up. He's built a slightly smaller but very impressive castle next door. He's strong. He's ambitious. The people in the village are starting to listen to him. Suddenly, you're not so comfortable in your big chair. You start wondering if he's planning to knock your castle down. You start wondering if he's planning to take your crown. That's the trap. The Greek historian Thucydides put it a bit more elegantly. As he famously wrote, "It was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable." The key word there is fear. It's not necessarily about aggression or a lust for conquest. It's about the profound, gut-wrenching anxiety that comes from seeing your dominant position challenged. The ruling power fears losing its influence, its security, its prestige. The rising power, meanwhile, feels boxed in and denied respect. This creates a dangerous cocktail of pride, insecurity, suspicion. It's a historical pattern, not a law. In the last 500 years, there have been 16 cases where a rising power challenged a ruling one. 12 ended in war, but in 4, leaders steered a different, more peaceful road. The situation between the United States and China fits the description almost perfectly. The U.S. has shaped global institutions, policed the seas, and set the technological pace. China, in a few decades, has transformed from a poor agrarian country into the world's second-largest economy, a technological powerhouse, and a growing military force. This isn't a minor shift. It's a tectonic rebalancing of power, and the fear Thucydides wrote about hangs heavy from Washington to Beijing. For decades, the story of America and China was all about money. China made all the things, the toys, the phones, the trainers, and America bought them all. Factories boomed, millions found work, and American homes filled with astonishingly cheap goods. The two economies became intertwined, like climbers roped together. Now they argue about which way to go and threaten to cut the rope. The battlefield is tariffs, sanctions, angry accusations from Washington. China didn't play by the rules, stealing IP, forcing tech transfers, juicing firms with subsidies. Tariffs said, enough is enough, play fair, or we stop playing. From Beijing, that's sore loser talk. Success came from hard work. America is trying to trip them just before the finish line. If the economic squabble is a noisy argument in a pub, the military tensions are like two people holding loaded pistols under the table. Nowhere is this clearer than the South China Sea, one of the world's most vital shipping lanes. A gigantic chunk of trade, oil, gas flows through it. China's 9-dash line claims infuriate neighbors. Beijing builds islands, runways, missile batteries, harbors. The United States, Japan, Australia see a power grab. U.S. Navy phone-ops sail close and recon planes fly nearby. Messages in steel and contrails. Every destroyer passing an outpost becomes a high-stakes message, a naval staring contest. Section 5, the great tech tussle, chips, spies, smartphones. We once thought tech would knit the world together. Internet, smartphones, social media. Now it's a primary battlefield. This isn't a war of tanks, but semiconductors, algorithms, fiber optic cables, the backbone of the 21st century. Technological decoupling is drawing a digital iron curtain. The American case rests on deep suspicion. U.S. intelligence believes Chinese firms like Huawei are beholden to the party and could be ordered to spy through 5G gear. If a Chinese firm builds your 5G, connecting cars to power grids, you may hand Beijing the keys to your digital kingdom. So, Washington urges bans and slams chip sanctions. From China's view, that's a technological war to hobble its champions. Beijing pours billions into chips, software, its own standards, to never again be sanction vulnerable. Two internets may emerge. Nations weigh cheaper Chinese tech against U.S. security warnings. The split breeds division, suspicion, and a lot less efficiency. The contest isn't just bilateral. It's for friends and influence, like two popular kids on a playground. The U.S. has vast alliances, NATO, Japan, South Korea, Australia, built on democracy, human rights, mutual defense. When Washington applies pressure, it can marshal a united front. China plays economics. The Belt and Road builds ports, rails, bridges, often with fewer strings. Message: we're here to do business, not lecture. It's one goodwill, but the U.S. calls it debt trap diplomacy. Loans too big to repay, leading to control of strategic assets. Allies counter with alternative financing. Smaller states feel the tug of war and pressure to choose. Many want both, but the middle ground shrinks. Blocs harden, global problem solving gets harder, instability rises. A with us or against us mentality grows, raising the risk of miscalculation and conflict. The world is becoming more complicated and fragmented, and everyone is being drawn into its orbit. To avoid a monumental crash, we must see through both windscreens. From Washington, the post-Guipu order, free trade, freedom of the seas, democratic values, delivered peace and prosperity worth defending. China is seen as revisionist, enjoying open markets while tightening authoritarian control, cracking down in Hong Kong, oppressing Uyghurs, and posturing in the South China Sea. For many Americans, this is democracy versus autocracy, and America must lead the free world in pushing back. In Beijing, history looms large, a century of humiliation by foreign powers, Britain, Japan, America. Today's rise is a rightful return to global stature. Many feel they've earned a top-table seat, resent containment, and see U.S. hypocrisy, Iraq, Afghanistan, covert meddling, inequality, racial tension. Rules-based order can sound like U.S. rules-based order. Human rights talk is heard as a cudgel to keep China down. Both sides, in other words, are utterly convinced that they are in the right. That conviction, paired with fear, is what makes this so dangerous. And billions of ordinary people are caught in the middle. The stakes could not be higher. War isn't chess or a video game. A U.S.-China conflict would be a catastrophe on a scale unseen since 1945. The human cost would be staggering. Two militaries with the most advanced, lethal conventional weapons over Taiwan or the South China Sea, hypersonic missiles, stealth bombers, aircraft carriers, submarines, and that's before the terrifying word, nuclear. Even if non-nuclear, the global economy would buckle. Supply chains for cars, phones, food, shattered overnight. Seas become war zones. Shipping halts, markets crash, energy prices soar, and countries plunge into depression. Cyber war shuts power grids, freezes banking, cripples comms, even contaminates water, causing chaos far from any front. In space, satellites fall. Navigation, communication, intelligence go dark. GPS dies in your car, card readers fail, even weather forecasts vanish. Life grinds to a halt. Even victory leaves a smoldering ruin. Trust destroyed, institutions worthless, climate pandemics, poverty ignored in a harsher Cold War. A war between the US and China is a war that nobody can win. The price of failure is too high. Avoiding it is humanity's single most important task. So here we are, two superpowers, bristling with weapons and suspicion, locked in a dangerous dance that looks worryingly like Thucydides warned. The trap is set. The stakes are unimaginably high. Is war inevitable? The simple answer is no. It is not. History is a guide, not a jailer. Rising powers and ruling powers must find a way to live together without war. The path to conflict is a choice. The path to peace is also a choice, requiring more courage, more patience, and a lot less shouting. But it is there. First step, talk properly. Not press conference theatrics or tweets, but consistent, quiet, professional diplomacy with open lines so small accidents don't spiral. Set clear rules for navies and air forces. Build guardrails around dangerous tech like artificial intelligence and cyber weapons. It's not about becoming best friends. It's about managing a competition that doesn't burn the whole house down. Both sides need a long, hard look in the mirror. America proving leadership by example. China easing neighbors' fears by respecting law and sovereignty. Responsibility doesn't lie only in capitals. Allies, businesses, citizens must resist the drumbeat of nationalism and fear. The future is not yet written. We are not doomed to repeat mistakes. Fear is powerful, but so are wisdom, restraint, and the shared desire to leave our children a peaceful, prosperous world, not one smoldering in the ashes of our own foolishness.
The Thucydides trap, America and China chasing the dragon. Who will rule Babylon, essentially? The Thucydides trap is a term popularized by an American political scientist, Graham T. Allison, to describe an apparent tendency towards war when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power as a regional or international hegemon. The term exploded in popularity in 2015 and primarily applies to analysis of China and the United States relations. The Thucydides trap is a concept originated by Herman Wouk, the novelist and World War II veteran who used it in his Admiral Raymond A. Spruance lecture delivered on April 16, 1980, at the U.S. Naval War College. Wouk compared the U.S.-Soviet Cold War to the Cold War that developed between Athens and Sparta once they had defeated Persia, who was their common enemy, remarking, "And more than 2 millennia later, we seem still trapped in Thucydides' world. None of the ways in which those quarrelsome Greeks behaved is suited to these dread times of nuclear menace, yet we still behave in those ways and can find no other. How do we break out of this Thucydian trap, which now threatens to strangle, if not to destroy our world?" Decades later, the term was then popularized by American political scientist Graham Allison to describe an apparent tendency towards a war when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power as a regional or international hegemon. The term became widely used in 2015 and primarily applies to an analysis of China and the United States relations. So on his previous visit, Donald Trump and his entourage, they go to Beijing to meet with President Xi, and there's a lot to take away from what occurred there. President Donald Trump blamed his predecessor Joe Biden for making the United States a nation in decline after Chinese President Xi Jinping invoked the name of an ancient ancient Greek general to discuss U.S.-Chinese relations. Xi, speaking to Trump on May 14th during their high-stakes Beijing summit, warned of the Thucydides trap. So Xi brings it up, a political theory that war is likely to result when an emerging world power threatens to displace an existing world power. So even these leaders see it. The question is, can China and the U.S. transcend the so-called Thucydides trap and forge a new paradigm of major country relations? Xi said to a translator, can we work together to tackle global challenges and inject more stability into the world? It's a beautiful thought, but what do you think? What does history kind of tell us? Where is this all going? We'll check it out. We'll look deeper into it. But there's so much at stake here. And if you look at the way things are going, if you hear the Chinese version of it, it's that America has become arrogant, expecting to be on top, and being on top could mean stepping on everybody else. So is that the case? Is that what it has to be? China's grown too big to be, stepped on. And I think the United States is finding that out. So, something to think about. Do you continue to step on China, or do you sit back and try to work something out to where the world isn't destroyed? So we have a lot of decisions to make, a lot of things at stake. Where it's going, you have to think it through. You can't defeat China just by force of arms, and the United States seems to that's like their default position. Always have to default to the war machine. Well, China's not playing that game, but yet China is in a position to defend itself. They don't have an expeditionary force, but what they do have is an extremely powerful military. And here's what people don't get, is that their manufacturing is, bar none, the greatest in the world. So if you do get into a military conflict with China, they're much like the United States was prior to World War II, where, the Japanese Navy was the largest Navy in the world at the start of the war. And their aircraft, numerous. I think I remember hearing something like they had over 7,000 aircraft. But as the war got in progress, what happened? The United States started spitting out 7,000 aircraft a month. So when the manufacturing giant got woken up and got online, there was no defeating the United States. And so China now kind of sits in that position, in that China manufactures over 40%, nearly half of all manufactured goods on this planet. That has never been seen before. No country has ever commanded that much manufacturing power. So if you think about it, any war with China, meaning, any serious war, would cause China's manufacturing base to shift to a wartime manufacturing base. And now all that power, that manufacturing power, would be shifted to making military hardware, missiles, bombs, ships, guns. And not to forget that they have a population of 1.4 billion, meaning they could throw 4 times as many people on the battlefield than we could. So war with China it's not a winnable thing. There are some people who are all gung-ho, I know, and they think America could defeat anybody. Well, number one, America, being America, you have to gain the support of the people. That's what George Bush did during 9/11, essentially. And so he got a consensus not only from the people in America. When the towers came down, people were like, somebody's got to pay. That galvanized the American people. And on the flip side, other nations were actually feeling, bad for the United States. In other words, they were able to get a consensus from the UN to do what they did, weapons of mass destruction, But they were smart enough to do that first without these the backing of the American people, the support of the American people, and the support of the UN, it makes any actions you take militarily something that is not going to be tolerated for a long term. You might be able to get away with some strikes, some bombings, but an all-out war, not going to happen without the support of the people, because it's the people who are going to be who'll be on the battlefield, their sons and daughters taking a hit. Because I guarantee these oligarchs, their children, they're not going to war. So it's something to think about. So if China can outmanufacture the United States 10-1, meaning, and I heard it's greater than that, a lot greater than that. So for every one aircraft carrier we could build, they could build 10 of them. And I heard they really could build like 100 of them in the time it takes us to build one. So, but you get the picture. If it came down to manufacturing weapons, we could not keep pace with China. So any conventional war would be doomed to failure. One of the things the Chinese don't have is an expeditionary force. So they don't have a military that's designed to project power. But if you were to try to invade China or its perceived territories, you would be up against a very formidable force, a force that could definitely outproduce you as far as weapons. And that nobody wants to talk about that, but they know this is not a doable thing. So President Trump goes to China, and that in and of itself says a lot. And the fact that Xi Jinping did not meet the airplane when it landed, that says a lot. So, Putin's visiting now, and I'm pretty sure Xi met Putin's plane. That tells you the difference in relationships. So we'll just keep our eye on this. But let's get back to the Thucydides trap. There's a chart I put up. It's basically showing through history, the rising power versus the declining power scenario and what the outcomes were. So, in number one, late 15th century, Portugal was the ruling power. Spain was rising, and no war came out of it. So you might want to ask, what did they figure out? Did they figure out something? Well, I think what they figured out, because the land masses were so unexplored and there was so much of it, that everybody kind of wins. You know what I'm saying? If you look at it, Portugal was focused on West Africa because the transatlantic slave trade started with Portugal. And then they discovered the Brazils, what they call the Brazils in South America. And that was a land that was like designed and built to grow sugarcane, which at that time was as valuable as gold, because sugar in Europe was at a premium. It wasn't there. So when they discovered sugarcane, wow, their economy took off. And so I think what happened in Brazil, Portugal was satisfied with that. Brazil is a huge landmass, right? But that left open the rest of South America and Central America. So the Spanish went there. Everybody went through the Caribbean first, but the Spanish go there, and Spain is only but so big, meaning their population is. Look, if you're exploring South America and you're Spain, that's taking up all your time and energy, and everything you find belongs to you. It's just, gold at that point, So you, in this situation, you were making so much money, you were getting so wealthy, you weren't worried about Portugal getting wealthy because, but you had all the rest of South America and Central America. They overtook Portugal. Number two, the first half of the 16th century, is France overtook Spain. Spain's problem was they got all this gold from the Americas, and they tended to spend it on whatever they needed, goods and services. But what does that do when you actually take gold coins and use it as money? Well, you start depleting your stash. You know what the French and the British understood, and there's a reason they understood it, because you could substitute currency in lieu of your gold supply. In other words, what we kind of call fiat currency. You just say, hey, we got this amount of gold, but instead of trading you gold, we'll trade you pieces of paper, notes payable. So, and I can, you might take a wild guess at who taught the British and the French this policy, this process. So anyway, so you have to look at it this way. Spain had kicked that group of people out. And so they were fleeing to all these other countries. But with them came that knowledge of, you guessed it, how to create currency and use that to barter with rather than your gold supply. So by taking that group of individuals, the ones that the Spanish Inquisition targeted, when they kicked those people out, they went to other countries and taught them how to make money. So anyways, I'm not going to go into detail there. That's for another video. But Spain was a ruling power, and then the Ottoman Empire came about, a Muslim empire in Sweden. Then the Dutch Republic took over, and the rising power was now England. And of course, there's some overlap with all of this. And of course, and that's in the mid to late 17th century, late 17th century to mid 18th centuries. France rose up as a ruling power, so that's about the time of Napoleon Bonaparte, and then the rising power would be Britain. And of course, Britain ends up defeating Napoleon, and the United Kingdom takes over. That was in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So then France becomes a rising power in the mid 19th century. And I think I might be getting twisted. That might be the time of Napoleon, but because 19th century actually means the 1800s. So that sounds like Napoleon. The ruling power was France and United Kingdom. The rising power was Russia. And then the rising power became Germany. Late in the 19th and early 20th centuries, China and Russia were the ruling powers. People forget how powerful China was. And then they had that century of humiliation. Then Japan came on the scene, and Japan started, what Japan started doing was shadowing Western Europe. They would actually travel to Western Europe to see what makes Western Europe, the West, so powerful. And they were taking notes. And basically what they came away with was natural resources are at a premium. We need to become colonial rulers. Of course, they invade China, and they invade China because the United States had cut them off from oil and scrap metal, because Japan has no natural resources. So when the United States cut them off, they looked over at China and said, well, we can get steel or iron ore from China. So the early 20th century, United Kingdom was the ruling power. Then the United States comes on the scene. Well, two English-speaking countries, right? But World War I starts, and that's the reason that starts. There's millions of reasons, but I know what the history books tell you. They talk about the assassination of Duke Ferdinand by the Serbian national. No, that's not what happened. What actually happened was Germany. Their GDP had, for the first time, surpassed England's GDP. Germany was now the rising power. So you see that in 12 and 13, early 20th century, mid 20th century. So the United Kingdom was looking at Germany like, no, we got the United States across the Atlantic, but you're in our own backyard. We will not let Germany rule Western Europe. So a lot of weird things happen, but Germany is nudged into a war that they didn't want. They didn't need to want it because their manufacturing base and their economy was booming, right? So why disturb it? What happened there was the United Kingdom kicked over the chessboard when they realized they couldn't beat Germany from an economic standpoint. Germany was a well-oiled machine at that point. Of course, Germany falls to the Allies. You know, you got World War I, World War II, and I won't go through the whole thing, but basically what happens is every time there's a dominant power, there's always this upstart power that's, you know, hungry and coming up behind, and the ruling power is frightened of losing its position. So usually they try to put the clamps on the rising power, and it usually ends in war. So as you can see in the chart, the result is basically 12 out of the 16 times ends in a war. So it's a thing. It's a thing to pay attention to. But I won't belabor this. What I would like is for you to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments you want to put into this, leave it in the comments section. And I thank you all for bringing certain stories to my attention and for continually keeping me updated with certain events around the world. That's what we report on. So subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they'd find it interesting as well. I'm very excited to continue this journey with you. And I think we're going to conclude on that note. So take heed. These days are treacherous. And we'll keep you informed, so stay with us. Stay tuned in. Because that's what we do here at STM News and Global World Report. Rachel, take it away.
Well, that's the news for tonight. Thank you so much for continually supporting our content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they would find it interesting as well. We're very excited to continue this journey with you. We thank you all for bringing certain stories to our attention, and for continually keeping us updated with certain events around the world.
Coloring Book for Kids, Volume 2. Available August 15, 2025 on Amazon. The Bible Lions Coloring Book for Children. Color 30 fun designs of inspirational verses and Christian artwork. A beautiful children's coloring book designed to fill your child's mind with the positive words of God's love. The Bible Lions Coloring Book for Kids was designed to be a fun, yet effective way to help children calm their tension, Hand-lettered quotes and adorable hand-designed illustrations will inspire your child as they reflect on God's promises.